Welcome to Up on the Bars discussion with your host, Roy Bain.
Well, after a long hiatus through the winter and all that stuff, we're back live here, and I've got a guest tonight that I've been chomping at the bit to talk to all week because he's got a really cool day job, probably one of the coolest ever. Dwarf car racer. I first found out who he was last year at Petaluma, and we're going to get into all of that stuff. But he also works in the movie industry, and I'm going to give you a big introduction to Frankie Politelli. How are you doing tonight, Frankie?
Good, sir. Thank you for having me.
So we'll get into right off. I become aware of who you were at Petaluma last year because I seen you take probably the worst wreck I've ever seen happen at Petaluma. And if you didn't get to see it at the racetrack, I have it up here. We're going to go through a quick highlight of his wreck, and I want y'all to see that, and then we're going to get into that discussion. So I don't think you can count how many times you rolled over, but it was at least about 15 down the front stretch at Petaluma. So tell me about that. Tell me about that wild ride.
Well, it was three of us racing for the finish. I think we were going for fourth place, and I was on the far inside, the car on the outside of me. I had a broken left ball joint. Should have never even been out there. I went to block the car on the far outside, bounced off him, and came back and got me in the right rear. And unfortunately, I don't remember too much about it because I was knocked out pretty quick. I was put to sleep pretty quick.
Well, and I have some pictures to show out. So I have to say, you got up and walked away and rode off on the golf cart. So that was, I really didn't expect that. So I know that you got an ambulance ride shortly after that. And I saw this picture. You shared this with me. I would assume that was in the hospital after the accident, correct?
Yes.
So then I found you on Facebook because somebody shared your post, and I have to show this because you don't look the same in that picture. So tell me, what injuries did you sustain in that accident? Because I don't think it was very much, was it?
No, just a pretty good concussion. I had bleeding on the brain in two spots, but just stayed overnight in the hospital. I'm not one to sit in the hospital. So come the next morning, I was like, you got to get me out of here. And so they said there's not a whole lot they can do, just kind of rest for concussion. So they let me go, and I was glad to get out of there. I even volunteered to take my own IV out and get on the road.
All right. So I'm going to rally into what your day job is. And that's where I want to pick up and talk about how you got into that and your progression up to that. What is your day job? I want you to tell everybody what your day job is, because it's probably one of the coolest day jobs.
I am a camera car operator, and I do big rig stunts, and I also do transportation for the union for Local 399.
And when you say that, you work on Hollywood films, TV shows, all that stuff. And I'm going to share this post, and I asked him for permission before we did it. We had to be cleared up. We were going to have Frankie on last week after the Kern Nationals, but he was busy that week, and this was the coolest reason ever to not come on here. And I want y'all to read this if you can see it. It says, can we touch bases over the next day or two? I'm working on the TV show SWAT. So he's doing night shooting. So it's like, I think that's a pretty cool excuse. So when you say you drive the stunt or the camera operator, what do you actually do? Can you explain what you do there?
A camera car is basically almost like a crane sticking out the top of the car, and cameras on the end of that, and that arm will rotate 360 degrees. So a lot of car chase scenes, just easy way to explain it. It's just doing a lot of car chase, a lot of car to car filming.
Okay, so I come across Highway 58 out through Mojave Desert, and they were out filming, and I've seen all that. So you're in the car that, like, let's just say Fast and the Furious, you're out in front of them, you're filming what's going on in their car behind them, or behind them filming what's going on in front of you, correct?
Exactly. Sometimes they're behind us, sometimes they're next to us. Sometimes we're just doing some chase stuff.
Okay, so I have to ask. So when you're doing that, are you? We're watching it on TV or in the movie theater. It looks like, oh my God, they're doing 150 mile an hour, whatever. Are y'all actually driving that fast, or is it slowed down?
It's slow. It's slowed down. The fastest I've ever gone is probably 75, 80.
Okay, so you're actually making pretty good speed, though. I mean, 75 or 80. There's not a lot of room for error.
Well, that's the best. Most of the time, it's usually about 35, 40 miles an hour.
Okay. So, and you said you did big rig stunts. Tell me about that, because I drive a big ig. Now I want to know. Now you really got me curious on that one.
I did the big rig stunts in Spider-Man, and the scene was supposed to be Spider-Man's on a flatbed with these 4-foot concrete pipes, and he's hiding in the concrete pipes. The truck driver sees him in the pipes, panics, makes a hard left-hand turn, and the scene was originally supposed to be the tractor slides around the corner. It was a 3-axle tractor, and to slide it around the corner. But we worked on that for 5 days, and they literally cut it down to about 2 seconds.
Oh, well, you still got to do it. There you go. That's the cool thing, right?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, not many people get a slide a 3-axle. And so, as a truck driver, that's pretty sometimes different, intentionally to do it, but it was a lot to slide a 3-axle around the corner.
Well, I promise you, if you ask anybody that drives truck for a living, they've been in a parking lot where it's snowy and icy, and I guarantee you, every one of them will tell you they've at least threw a donut in the truck at least once or twice. I can promise you. So it's what we all live to do in a big truck. So have you done any other stuff? I mean, do you do stunt work and all that stuff? Because I know you told me the story of how you got into it, but I want to ask you ahead of that before we get there.
Back in the day, I've done quite a bit of quad stunt work. I grew up racing ATCs. I raced quads from 85 to 87. I raced a lot of quads and Coliseums. The LA Coliseum, I did the Mickey Thompsons. So that kind of came naturally to me. And I did a movie called Desert Blue many, many years ago. And I did quite a bit of the quad stunts in that. And then I taught 4 actors how to ride a quad.
Okay. Well, I have to ask, what 4 actors? Now you got me going.
Yeah. Like I said, well, let me get back to you on that because I'm not the name guy. Okay. I could tell you the girl that's, oh boy, you had to ask me. Let's see. Kurt Russell's stepdaughter. She was one of them. The girl that's on The View that played the youngest daughter on Roseanne, she was one of them.
Melissa Gilbert.
Yes. And the guy that was the heavy set guy on that they called Randy on My Name Was Earl, big heavy set guy.
Oh my God, my favorite guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand he's not heavy anymore. I guess he's lost a lot of weight. And then there was one other guy that give me a minute and I'll think his name. His brother's a big actor.
Randy, My Name Is Earl. That I'm trying to figure out what his name is. I can't find his name on there, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, then we did Alvin and the Chipmunks, who was also in, the guy
Ethan
that played.
Suplee is his name.
There you go. And then the star of My Name Is Earl, he was that's the same gentleman that was in that played in Alvin and the Chipmunks. And
yeah, he's
super nice guy.
Yeah, they seem like they were. That was one of my favorite shows. When my wife got injured in a truck fire, we got turned on to My Name is Earl, and I've watched every one of them. I think we have it all on a DVD. Love that show. So
Wow.
So that's one of my favorite shows. So seeing that you worked on there, that's very, very cool. So, but tell us how you got started in it, because that's kind of an interesting story. It was just you kind of stumbled into it, for lack of better terms, right?
I was about 9 years old, and I was actually riding my motorcycle out at Indian Dunes in Southern California, and there was some guys out there filming, and I went over a jump, and I came around the next lap, and they said, "Hey, can you jump this if we were to film you?" And I said, "Absolutely." And they talked to me for a little bit, and they said, "We'll pay you to do it." And I think I got a couple $100 and brought me, and I'd hang out all day. And then I stood around for a couple hours, and I thought, wow, this is ridiculously boring, and I can't sit here. I just kind of snuck out after I got my money and went on to just never really did it again. And about 20 years later, I was racing cars, and same thing. Somebody asked me, could I, slide a car around a corner? We were actually out watching a film, and one of my buddies referred me and said, "Hey, this guy could do it." And it was a non-union show, and so I hopped in the car, and I slid around a corner, and guy says, "Hey, this is something you ought to get into." And I really never thought too much about it. And then the third was when they needed somebody to do some quad work. I actually got the phone call to say, "Hey, we'll bring you in." What they call Taft-Hartley you, and bring you into SAG. And I thought, wow, I can make some money doing this. And that was in 1998.
And you hadn't looked back since then, right?
I took some time off. Definitely did a lot of time with my boys, as they grew up racing, and definitely took a lot of time off to go racing with them.
All right, so I did some research, and we talked about this a little bit before you came on the show. I went and did some research and found you. There's a really cool picture, and I didn't upload it for some reason, of you in the LA Coliseum with some trophies. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. Tell me what that was and what you accomplished there, because you had some big wins, and I know you did really well there.
That would have been, I believe, 1987. I don't know exactly which photo, but I think it was 1987 at the LA Coliseum, racing my quad. And yes, I raced quads professionally for about 3 years, and that's how I made a living for a couple of years. I was whole 16 years old.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. It's the same one. You sent me a kind of a folded up picture of it, but it's the same one I saw online. So how did you get into quad racing professionally? What was involved with doing that? I mean, I'm sure it started with, hey, I like riding a four-wheeler, and then it progressed into something else.
Actually, racing motorcycles as a little kid. And then I was always had ATCs to go out and play on. And when I was about 14, 15 years old, my parents went through a divorce. I was kind of on my own. I've been on my own since I've been 15. Mom went one way, dad went another. And I took a job for a company called James Lucky Enterprises in San Fernando, California. And they raced ATCs, sold ATV parts, started racing ATCs, and advanced as fast as I could to start making some money. I needed a job. And remember going to the racetrack. I had a 1967 El Camino. Didn't even have my driver's license. I used to drive it to the racetrack, and didn't know you needed a parent signature. So I asked the guy that was parked next to me just to sign it. I didn't know I could afford it and did it myself, but here or there. And that was racing ATCs. And a few months later, quads came out and started racing quads, and just went right to the professional class and raced as much as I could anywhere and everywhere just to make a living.
Well, we were talking before, you were down in Las Cruces in that area, and you were sounds like you were kind of home based out of there for a little while.
Well, that was with my son. That was with Austin. The kid that used to stay with us quite a bit, Jason Anderson, he was from Las Cruces, and that would have been for the motorcycle racing with my son.
Yeah, which I didn't upload that picture too, but I know your son's very successful in the motocross world too. It sounds like he's doing really well.
Yeah, Austin races Supercross and motocross. They were in Nashville last weekend for Supercross.
Wow. That's so when we talked earlier this week, I have to ask, you said your dad helped you all along. Did your dad race too? Are you a generational or are you the first racer in the family?
No, my dad was pretty heavy into drag racing. And I got involved in racing. I started in quarter midgets. I was 4 going on 5. And we started actually in Northridge, California, racing quarter midgets. And we used to race like Northridge and Pomona, and then started traveling to the nationals, racing quarter midgets. Me and my sister both race quarter midgets.
Okay. Awesome. So did your sister still race? I have to ask that.
No, unfortunately, my sister passed away about 10 years ago.
Sorry to
And
hear that.
yeah, but no, she only went on. She raced quarter midgets, and that was it.
Okay. See, and anybody that listens in here, and I get a lot of grief about it, huge Danica fan. Support women in racing. I think that we need more women in racing. That's why I was asking about that. I'm big into supporting that, so that's why I had to ask the question.
Got it.
So, all right. So you got into quarter midgets, then your family separated. You got into dirt motocross racing. What got you into auto racing? Because we've got a lot to get into with that too.
No problem. Actually, we did quarter midgets. Went from just did a lot of racing. We raced quarter midgets. Did some bicycle racing. Went from bicycles to motorcycles. Did some go-kart racing. We did a lot of go-kart racing. We did IKF and we did go-karts for 3-4 years. Went to nationals all across the United States. We did dirt, sprint, enduro. And then my parents went through divorce. And like I said, mom kind of went one way, dad went another. And wanted to, stay racing. Couldn't do much on my own. So ATCs grew up around it and rode them. And that was kind of the next thing was ATCs and quads. And after that, I actually made a little bit of money, and I started I used to own some Texaco Expresses oil change centers.
Okay.
And from there, made some money and bought a street stock and raced that like 3-4 times. And I thought, this isn't for me. It didn't go very fast. We went up to Mesa Moran and Bakersfield, and I bought an IMCA modified to run on the asphalt and absolutely loved that. And did that, went from that to did some late model racing and then the Southwest Tour. And then,
I believe
that's car.
I think that's your tour car right there. I think that's what you sent me.
Yep, that's a tour car. That was at Phoenix. And that one was interesting. That year would have been 1998. And my rookie test was myself, Kevin Harvick. There was like 4 of us there that had to do, when you did a mile or bigger, you had to do the rookie test back then. And so that was kind of interesting and did race against Kevin, in the late model back at Bakersfield.
So I have to ask, did you trade paint with Kevin? I got to ask.
You know what? A little bit. He was kind of the local favorite, but little guy. And so I'd kind of give him a hard time, but no, he was awesome, very respectful. And, we always race. You give respect, you get respect. And he was somebody, he gave you respect, so you gave him respect back.
Yeah. So I just have to ask, because there's a lot of the West Coast talent that came out there. I mean, you got Jeff Gordon that's made it into NASCAR, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson. We're seeing a lot of some other ones, and I know there's what's his name that's racing for Richard Childress right now. I just read an article about him earlier. My brain is getting older, so I can't remember his name, but he's doing really well from out here. So it's kind of cool to see that you raced with those guys that have made their way and all that. You talked about bicycle racing. You're talking about 86 to 88 in there.
If bicycles was actually back in the late 70s, like 78, 79.
Okay. So BMX was the big thing right around that age, because BMX was a big thing that moved to New Mexico out there. So was that the kind of bicycle racing you were doing, or were you doing something different?
We were doing the BMX, the short track stuff, just BMX racing.
Yeah, because I remember getting the magazines and showing everybody doing all the crazy stunts out here on the West Coast in California and the swimming pools and all that stuff building up. So I wondered if I've seen your picture in any of those.
No, probably not. It wasn't that famous in bicycle.
Well, back near that area, it was like if you had a Kuwahara bike or a Hutch or, there was so many of those big names. I got my first one. It was a Schwinn Predator. I thought it was something, and it was nothing, So hearing all these stories, you were out kind of in the epicenter where you grew up, kind of the epicenter of all that moved across the country. So I just had to ask about that. Did you meet any of the big names back during that time frame, or did you race against any of the big names?
At bicycles, we went to all the nationals, and guys that were like at the top of the sport back then. Like a guy I still talk to today is Wayne Crosdale. Like Stu Thompson, a lot of guys, BMX guys would know these guys. But, I was a whole, 8 years old. I ran the 8-9 expert class, and these guys were in the pro class. So these are guys, when the pro class would come up, go up to the fence and watch the pros, of course.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of talented guys, and some of these guys went on to race mountain bikes and, stayed pedaling bikes for quite a few years.
Well, and I trolled your Facebook page for some interesting photos and to find out a little bit about you on here. You just recently bought a bike. I want to know what kind of bike that was, because that's pretty fancy.
I bought an Intense e-bike, and dude, for my youngest son, races downhill and dual slalom and mountain bikes. Right. So we got an e-bike to help him. Actually, a big event is called the Sea Otter at Laguna Seca, and they have what they call the dual slalom. So we originally were going to get it for that to help them tow him up the hill, and then they race down. But I got the thing, and like I said, all it is a pedal assist, so it just helps you a little bit. And I'll tell you, I've got over 1,000 miles on it and love it. It is awesome. So
I have to I have to laugh, because I know I met you down at Kern and we talked quite a bit. You could tell that you're roughly my age. I don't know, you're 54 to 56, somewhere in there.
54.
Okay, same age as me. You're in way better shape than I am. And hearing you talk about doing all this stuff, I have a doctor friend over here that we'll talk about. He always, every summer, they take like a week-long hike and go hike all over through the mountains and climb mountains. And I think they take like 80 miles during the week and all this stuff. And he sends me pictures for all the way doing all that stuff. And I finally told him, I was like, man, you're making me feel like such a dick while I'm sitting here eating a chocolate bar while you're up there at the top of a mountain. It's like, thanks. Nice way to make me feel like crap. Appreciate it, man. Thanks. So,
I'll tell you, I love it. I love riding my bicycle. I mean, to me, it's cool being outdoors. Like we race only twice a month. And last weekend we were in Mammoth. We went up to go skiing. And I try to get outdoors as much as I can. It's just, as I'm getting older, it's like I want to just try to stay as healthy as I can. And I don't know, my bicycle, I feel pretty comfortable, and I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. Well, I listened to a book on tape, and cannot remember his name. He's a dude that's a Navy SEAL. And he does those marathon runs, those like super marathons or whatever. Man, he's telling me stories about what all he does, or telling the stories about all the racing that he does and all that stuff. David Goggins is his name. When I see people doing that, it's amazing. And the fact that you go out and do all that stuff is amazing to me, because I guarantee if I rode a bicycle at the end of the block, I'd have to go to the hospital. We'll just leave it at that. So, when he's telling me that, it's like, I don't know how y'all muster up the energy to do all of that stuff. It's crazy. But so you ran the tour car, and you sent me a picture of another one. And I know you told me a little bit of the story on this one. So I'm going to ask you about this one and tell me about this, because this was a pretty cool story too.
That's the IMCA mod. and we were racing dwarf cars. I did a handful of races in 2016. And our local track, it was just too much drama. They kind of slammed into each other. It would be, we'd race on Saturday night. Every Sunday morning, I'd take the rear bumper off and run it over with my dually wheels on my truck. And I'm like, this isn't fun. So I was looking for something, to kind of step up one class higher and, just to get more of a car and get a little more recognition. And so I met a guy, Mike Kirby, raced sprint cars for quite a few years. And I went out to Las Vegas, watched a big, believe it or not, they had about 200 A mods out there. And I thought, this is kind of cool. And he turned me on to a gentleman that owned Total Seal, the piston ring company. And Joey got a new car every year or every other year. And Mike said, hey, if you want to start out in a good car, this is the way to do it. And I thought to myself, might as well get a good car. And I suck at it. I know it's me. If I get a good car, no excuses.
Yep.
So, and we took the thing to Paris. They're in Paris, California. And didn't have a clue what we were doing. Didn't know how to do anything besides the air pressure. And went out and got lucky, won my heat race. So it put me on the outside of the front row. And believe it or not, led all 25 laps. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. But it was a little bit of luck there too, though.
Well, you're starting on the front row. Does it ever hurt, right?
That's for sure.
Yeah. So I'm listening to your story and knowing what your day job is. So I have to ask, are you one of those guys, because I'm very much this way to tell the whole story, are you kind of what you'd consider an adrenaline junkie? You like doing crazy stuff?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I enjoy, I'm more competitive. Right. I've always been, I don't care if I'm playing Monopoly or arm wrestling or just, playing football, whatever. I want to win,
Mm-hmm.
I was the way I was brought up. And I think, yeah, I enjoy being competitive. It's like when I got back in a dwarf car, I'm 54 now, but to me, when I race somebody that's 20, 25 years old, it just gives me more motivation to go out and that's somebody I want to beat.
So I have to ask, and there's a reason why I'm going to ask. I know y'all race in different divisions, different cars, and swap them out at the Nationals, which we'll get into talk about the Nationals. Have you had a chance to race against that young man, Merrick Pipe, yet?
I have not, but I know, seems like a super nice kid. I always give him a hard time because he doesn't know how to wheelie a motorcycle yet. So I always tease him when he's going to come over and teach him how to wheelie a motorcycle. But I think it's awesome. I mean, there's so many young kids like that, their parents get them involved with it so young. And I think if you're going to do something and continue on in motorsports, you got to start out young. Like I said, I started in quarter midgets when I was 5. Both of my boys started racing. Both of them started racing motorcycles before they were at the age of 5. So, it's you race so much and it's all you know. And I think that's and I think the biggest thing is just keeping kids active. The difference now, so many kids are just at home, video games. I mean, we were old school, we were out of the house working on race cars, motorcycles, bicycles, but we didn't play, we weren't into video games and sitting around watching TV all day long. And for Merritt, I think his dad, I think it's awesome. His mom and his dad are into it and they got him racing.
Well, let's face it. We're the same age. We didn't have video games when we were kids because Missile Command came out when I was almost in my teens. So we'll just leave it at that. We didn't have those. So, back in the day, there wasn't many choices with the video games. I still remember getting the Atari 2600. So we'll leave it at that. So, no, I was just going to ask you about if you got to race with him. And ask you, being your age and getting whooped up on somebody that age, that's got to leave a little sting in there because we've been there. We had a young man that we raced with the Pro Stocks. It was just a badass at about 14, and he whooped all of us. So,
yeah, unfortunately, I haven't got to race him yet, but hopefully one day. He's a super nice kid.
Oh yeah, I always enjoyed doing it. And the biggest if you've seen the pictures from when he won the Nationals at Antioch standing between the trophy girls, that is one of the most priceless pictures at his age. In that, I don't care what anybody says. It was just like, you know, and then his dad tells me, oh, yeah, we caught it. Yeah, that is his screensaver on his phone. So I teased him at Mojave about that one. That was one of the funniest stories ever. So, and his dad is just one of the funniest people you could ever sit and talk to.
Yeah, both of his parents seem like super, super nice people.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And I kind of think it's cool what he's doing this year, moving over with the Wegners, trying to step up his game a little bit or something like that. He was just racing down at Wairika last weekend, right down the road from us.
I heard that he won the event, but he got disqualified. I guess the car was too short, so that was kind of a bummer. I heard about that, but yeah,
I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. You know, when it, you know, especially the families that can afford it, and he's in the race car all the time. I mean, that's the best way. I mean, you as much as you can race. You know, like I said, back in the day when we could race 3-4 times a week, it just comes naturally then.
Yeah. So what got you into dwarf cars? Because apparently you've been racing them for a while. I'd never seen them until I came out to the West Coast. I like the cars. So how long have you been racing the dwarf cars, and how did you get involved with it?
I got one in 2016. I was looking, my son, you know, I ran my son a lot with Supercross all the way up to about 2013. And 14, he went up to Canada, rode for the Monster Energy Kawasaki team. And he was, you know, doing more and more on his own. And I just said, hey, I want to race while I can. So in 16, I bought back then Shane Ross and owned DNR. And I saw that he had a car for sale, called him up, ended up buying the car, and same type of deal as the IMCA car. Start out with a good car, and if you suck at it, you know it's you.
Yeah.
And the car actually, it was Ronnie Williams drove the car, and it was their house car. So it was only raced, you know, less than a dozen times, I think it was. And just started racing it and just went to my first national. I got third. And I thought, hey, this is a lot of fun. And I was impressed how many cars they get at, you know, a Dwarf Car National.
Yep.
And then it was a couple weeks later, we went to a race just outside of Bishop. I think it was Tonopah, Nevada.
Right.
And it was a money race. It paid like $1,000 to win. And Ronnie was there. And I thought to myself, I can't get beat by this dude. He used to drive my car. So this was like, you know, the thing. I got to make sure I beat Ronnie. And Joe Frock ended up winning. I got second. Ronnie got third. And I don't know. The dwarf cars are, you know what? The dwarf cars are so much fun to drive. And I tell my buddies that are trying to get into it, I'm like, this is literally cheaper than racing motocross.
Yep. I can believe that. So, and honestly, probably not much different than motocross because you're running a motorcycle motor. There you go, right?
There you go.
So, but so tell me about the dwarf cars. Tell us what kind of motors you run. I want to learn about those because I know most people run the GSXR motors. You're running into a quick change rear end.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make that work? I mean, that's kind of, one's not meant for the other.
Well, coming off the counter shaft where the sprocket would be on a motorcycle, they just put a yoke that goes to a drive shaft, and the drive shaft right down to the quick change.
Okay.
So that's how it's connected. I run the Suzuki GSXR 1000. In my last car, I had the Kawasaki ZX12. And that's a 1200cc Kawasaki motor. And that was awesome, but they're really, really hard to find. And that was in my last car. I wish Shane from DNR was still around. That guy was awesome. He built the car. He built his own motors. He was somebody that was quite the builder.
Well, and I'm finally getting some comments in here. Davey corrected me earlier about the Richard Childers driver. Jesse Love is the one I was thinking about that came from out here.
Okay.
Yep. So, no, I was off. Is there a limit on the CCs on your engines for what y'all are running with the dwarf cars? I've not looked at one of your rule books. So,
Well, the motors you can run, the ZX12 is the biggest that I believe you can run. I think it's up to 1250 cc's, but I think the biggest they make is a 12. The ZX12 is a 1200, but most of the field runs 1000 cc, either the ZX10 or the GSXR 1000.
Okay. So, and I was asking because I know back when I was in the Navy, this is many moons ago. So the big hot motorcycle was the Honda CBR 1000 RR or whatever. So you don't hear too many about the Honda engines. Does anybody run those or?
I haven't. I've heard of people running them back east, but I haven't seen one out on the West Coast. And then I think Yamaha has like a R1, or I don't. I've just seen people selling a car, and you see kind of what motor they have, but I haven't personally seen a Yamaha or a Honda in a car.
Okay, and that's why I was asking, because I honestly don't know, but coming from your motocross background, you probably have a pretty good idea how to work on the motors. So that would be an advantage for you, I would think, because if you've ever had a motorcycle motor apart, they're not like a car motor.
Well, back in the days when two strokes were around, two strokes were the easiest thing to work on. You could talk somebody how to do a top end over the phone. Four strokes, there's a lot of moving parts. So unfortunately, I got to get some help on the four strokes.
Yep. See, I know that there's a little bit different. I mean, I know what the difference is between a two-stroke and a four-stroke, but I don't know what the difference is. So
a lot of moving parts on a four-stroke.
Well, and I remember we had a guy that lived next door growing up. They raced motorcycles, and he had like a KTM 504, and his kids raced some Kawasaki's, and he was always building up. And I know the big thing, and I'm probably dating myself when I say this, I'm hesitant to say it, but putting the big old bows and reeds in them and all that stuff, that was the big thing then. I'm sure technology's way past that now. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, back in the day, the boys and reed, if you had like a Fox shock, all that stuff back in the day when you were a teenager, boy, you were somebody if you had a Fox shock back then.
Yeah, I remember that. And now we got Fox shocks on your racing cars, so there you go. It's full circle, right?
That's it. And I think what the Fox shocks they put on mountain bikes now are more expensive than what we had on our motorcycle back then.
Oh my God! I guess I don't want a mountain bike then, because that doesn't sound like much fun. But so you were talking about the Dwarf Car Nationals. If you're listening in and you haven't attended one of the Dwarf Car Nationals, do yourself a favor and hit one of them. I know coming up, you got Quincy, you got Merced, Willamette Speedway, Marysville Speedway. There's one a month. The Dwarf Car Nationals is not your Saturday night dwarf car show. If you haven't been to the Nationals, I think there was 90 cars in Kern, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was right about 90 cars.
So, and they come from everywhere. I mean, there's people from Colorado, people from Texas, Nevada, Arizona. I think you race normally. I think your club is the Redwood. No, which class are you?
I'm doing Southern Nevada this year. Okay. That's the club that I'm involved. I did a different club last year, another one just to meet more people. Just just kind of venture out to meet more people.
But the interesting thing about it is your cars are all legal, just like IMCA. Everybody's kind of under the same rules, correct?
Yes, they do. You roll through tech, and then after the main event, the top 10 cars get teched, and it's more of a driver's class. And the biggest thing is the setup on the Dwarf car.
Okay, so tell me about the setup on the Dwarf cars. I don't think you have a huge amount of adjustments on there, but you have some adjustability in them. But what do y'all have? Do y'all run 4 links, 3 links? How are y'all set up in the rear end?
Yeah, it's more like a 3-link with the quick change. There's actually quite a bit, and you're asking the wrong guy, unfortunately, on the setup, because that's something that I'm not good at. And there is quite a few adjustments. And that was the reason I bought an LRC out of Grants Pass, Oregon. And Chuck LaHorge is the builder, and I rely on him so much. And, he hasn't been able to make it to the first 2 nationals. I'm hoping he's at Quincy because I notice a huge difference when he's at the nationals. Just, being able to ask him questions, and he watches and just help me, set up, because it is pretty important with the setup of these things.
So your nationals, you usually have a practice night on Thursday night, and for lack of terms, there's a big old party in the pits.
Yes.
I hate to say it. I haven't attended one of those yet, but I've seen the pictures. I've heard the stories. And then Friday you race, Saturday you race, and each night y'all have a big dinner in the pits afterwards. And y'all have a really cool vibe when you go to those in the pits. And I think that's one of the coolest things to witness when you go there to a Dwarf Car Nationals too.
Yeah, that's the fun part. It's kind of cool. I mean, so many people come from all over, like you said earlier, and it's kind of cool. You meet, new people every weekend. And not only that, but it's like Thursday night is kind of an open practice to get familiarized with the track. Because a lot of people, when you go to these tracks, you've never raced there before. And then, Friday is the first day of racing. After the main events are done Friday, they have a dinner. And then after dinner, everybody's just drinking, having a good time, meeting people, bonfires, that type of stuff. Saturday, you turn around and do the same thing. And, people that stay around Saturday night, same thing, dinner and party afterwards.
And that's just one of those things that's really done. I've always liked the Dwarf cars anyway, but at the Dwarf Car Nationals, it's different. And what we were talking about, you had 90 cars there. They break them up into the sportsman, veteran, and pro division. Your sportsman division, I think they said if you win 2, you have to move up to the next division, I think is what I heard them talking about this year. So that's kind of, the sportsman is like people that haven't had any experience in the cars. They get to go out and race with maybe some more inexperienced people. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then I think they let them win more than 2. They let them stay in the season, for the year. And like Daniel Peters, who won the championship in sportsman last year, now he moved up to the pro class this year, and now is racing the pro class. So, and they split it up. The vet class is 45 and older. So. Like for me, if I had some help, I would do the vet class and the pro class, but just doing it myself and my girlfriend, we do at the nationals, just do the vet class. It's too much work to try to do both classes.
So do you have to change cars or can you run the car in both classes, or do you have to change cars? I thought you had to change cars.
This year you can run the same car.
Okay. See, I haven't kept up with it because I know last year Ronnie would run one class and then he would get in somebody else's car and then go run the other one and that stuff. And Ronnie is a unique individual too that I met. I ate dinner with him there. I guess he's from Missouri. Talking about growing up having a pet bear and some other stuff. He's got some really cool stories about growing up in Missouri.
Ronnie's a pretty cool guy. One of the stories I always remember about him is he was in front of me one time on that money race when we were in Tonopah, and he had all kinds of smoke coming out of his car. So I was just about ready to undo my buckles and ask him, "Hey, dude, is your car on fire?" And all of a sudden I see a cigarette fly out the window. So I'm like, all right, he's literally in there smoking a cigarette before we're going to go out. And we're at another race and they threw the red flag. So we're sitting there. He gets out of his car, lights up a cigarette. Somebody throws him a Pepsi. So he's got a Pepsi in one hand and a cigarette in the other. And I'm going, by God.
Well, and he's always fun to hang out with in the pits when you're seeing and listen to his stories. But at Mojave, he got into a little situation that wasn't of his doing. And I seen him come unbuckled and get out of that car on the front stretch. Thought there was going to be a fight right in front of the cameras. He was, as my buddy down south says, he was hotter than fish grease when he got out of that car.
Ronnie's a good dude. He's somebody, I don't know anybody currently racing right now that has raced longer than Ronnie Williams.
Okay. And guys, and his car is completely different. He's one of the few that's got kind of like the pickup shape in his car. So he's like kind of when you see his car, it's kind of the odd car out of the whole group. Oh, we lost Frank. There he is. He's back.
There you are.
All right, you're back. So you got dark over there too, by the way. I don't know if you have a light switch or.
Let's see what we got here. Sorry, it's getting dark. There we
Oh
go.
yeah, there you go. But yeah, he's kind of an interesting guy to sit and hang out with. It just always kind of happy-go-lucky. And then I don't know, he got in somebody else's car over there the second night and started at the back of the pack. And by God, he almost got her done in Mojave in somebody else's car the second night.
Yeah, he drove Kinzer Inderkotz, and Ronnie's just a good all-around dude. He's the type of dude, he will get in there neck deep and get dirty and greasy. He'll help anybody. He's very, very knowledgeable on dwarf cars too.
Yeah, but I don't think there's anybody in the pits with you guys that wouldn't help anybody. Joe Frock's another one, just fun to hang out and talk with. I got to meet Dylan Schrum this last weekend and do an interview with him, which that's going to lead into what I'm going to talk about too. Not only did we do the Dwarf Car Nationals at Kern with all you guys, then the next weekend we were at Stockton 99 on the asphalt with the same group of cars. That was kind of a very cool deal. And it was really cool seeing the dwarf cars in the pits on an asphalt track. Have you got to drive on asphalt yet with them?
I have not. I know at Havasu, Lake Havasu track, they do it on the asphalt. I haven't been there personally. We kind of focus on doing the nationals and maybe a money race here and there. And then the other couple weekends, like I said, we try to stay active doing the mountain biking, but I have not, to answer your question, I have not got to drive a dwarf car yet on the asphalt, but I would definitely try it.
Well, they were flat getting after it. I can tell you that from doing all that. But there is a vast difference between a dwarf car race on asphalt and a dwarf car race on dirt. There's a lot more excitement on the dirt, and I'm not taking away from any disciple either track. But the dwarf cars on dirt, it's kind of interesting to watch y'all throw it in the corner side by side, bump and bang, beat and bang, going down the corners. Y'all get after it on the dirt.
Yeah, a little dwarf car, believe they're pretty fast. You know, after my flip, you know, I put the car back together, and so I took it up and down the street by my house, and I had an app on my phone, just, you know, tells you how fast you're going. And I went third to fourth gear, and I looked down on my phone, and it said 102, and I was like, these little cars are faster than people think.
Yes. And the other thing too is, just like we showed the picture of your accident at Petaluma. I remember one of the first times I seen the guys racing dwarf cars. I seen one go off the corner at Southern Oregon Speedway. That little car hit that banking. It looked like he just jumped it across a ramp, just went way out there. It's crazy. And it just, they're so little, but it's such a lightweight. It's a high horsepower, low weight. So they flat get after it.
They do. Like we did the Vegas track, the half mile in Vegas. Did it last year. I didn't do it this year because I think it's too fast for a dwarf car. I mean, they're entering the corner over 100 miles an hour. And these cars weren't. You know, you saw my flip. Can you imagine? I was going another 30 miles an hour.
Wow. No, I couldn't. That. Like I said, there was at least 15 right there on just what we showed in that. And it's like, wow. And so, and we're broadcasting to Southern Oregon, and we talked about it before. They do have the big Bigfoot race coming up on the 28th and 29th of June. It's a big dwarf car race. I'd like to see all y'all guys come up and put on that, because that is a great little event at Southern Oregon Speedway too, with the Bigfoot race, and the Lahores and all those guys. They all work to make that a big show every year.
Yeah, there's some cool tracks up in Oregon. We got a chance last year to do Speed Week up there, and got to go to Coos Bay and a couple different tracks up there. And it's beautiful country. They got some great tracks up there.
Yep. Well, in Southern Oregon, supposed to have their opening weekend, and they're kind of watching the weather right now to see what it's going to do. This year, for the weather, has hurt every single track out there this year. It's been brutal.
Yeah.
So
I think last weekend was like the first in Southern California. Was like the first weekend it didn't snow or rain. You know, it was like that was the reason we took off, went to Mammoth.
Yeah. So you have raced multiple forms, just like I texted you the other night. Is there anything you haven't driven? Is there anything on your bucket list that you want to try to drive and race that you haven't got to?
Nothing kind of comes. I just enjoy it. I like to just, long as you can keep it fun. Like there was a race years ago that I really wanted to do, and it was at Mesa Moran. And I heard about it, and they literally put a sprinkler pipe on the fence in turn 1 and 2, and then they do the same thing in 3 and 4, and it was like an open comp race, basically run what you brung. You know, and the corners were soaked with asphalt. Just to me, just racing, just fun stuff. I don't care if you're in a street stock or you're in a late model, as long as you're having fun. You know, when it takes the fun out of it, it's like the guys with dwarf cars, they just take it so serious. And I want to say, bud, you're not going to get called for a NASCAR ride tomorrow. Have fun with it.
Well, let's see. I have a friend that talked me into going up. We were talking about Roseburg the other day, to go up and run what they called the Crash Classic, I think, back in the day. I think they were called J cars that they put on there, and they had a big 50-lap main event, and it was a paint to pass or paint to win or whatever they call it. In order to win that race, you have to trade paint with somebody. It's basically, it's a demo derby on a half-mile asphalt track, and they had big old Cadillacs, all that. My buddy Scotty won that night that was down there. But I remember going over there and like, yeah, you got to put a light up on your roof that turns on and off. And it's like, okay, so we got it up there. It's what's that for? It's like, well, if you're out of the race, you turn it on so they don't hit you on the track. They don't throw a caution unless you're like right in the middle of the turn. It's just one of those things. It was cool to do. I don't think I want to do it again. It takes a while to get over those wrecks, as you know, at this age, but it was just a cool thing to do. I like doing all the different things and all that stuff. That's why I like racing, just like what you were saying. It's the competition level. I'm the same way. When I was laughing at you when you were talking about it. You set out and play cards. I can't stand to lose. I'm that guy that dominoes, all that stuff. I have friends that won't play dominoes with me just because I just do shit that pisses them off. And, you know, I'm the same way with all that stuff. You just don't tell people that.
I mean, I don't care, but like I said, if it's a street stock or a freaking semi truck, whatever, you know, just have fun. And, you know, to me, it's like going to like the little local go-kart, K1 speed or whatever they call it. To me, you know, since I'm 6'3", 230 pounds. So I'm not going to compete with a kid that's 120 pounds in a go-kart. So to me, if I can't beat them, it's more fun taking them out, you know, just having fun, you know, just having fun. You know, you leave there laughing, and just, to me, that is the most fun. It's like at but at Mojave at the first national, I think I started like 18th and got up to about 5th and fell back to 14th, got back up to 4th. To me, that was more fun, just passing people and dodging the crashes. And that, to me, I got back to the pit area and I was like, that was fun.
Well, and y'all, and for the nationals, y'all run B mains in almost every class. Then you have the fast finishes the second day that determines your starting lineup. Like I said, there is so much racing that goes on in those 2 days. It's unreal. And it's hard to think back of all the things you see on the racetracks because I mean, there's always good racing with y'all guys at the nationals. It doesn't matter. It's awesome to watch y'all race. And, you know, there's some controversial stuff goes on there. We're not going to get in there and name names, but I know at Mojave, there's a big controversial moment. And it was kind of a little tense while everybody was getting dinner back there in the pits after that. So,
yeah, I'm just, you know what, keep it fun, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I think the best thing, you know, they did it years and years ago with motocross. It was like they brought out this big blow up. It looked like a fighting ring, and you had to wear these big, huge boxing gloves. I mean, they were huge. And it's like, you got a problem, deal with it that way, you know, have fun with it at least, you know, take your anger. But these people spend too much time. It's like, I've always been the type, I'd rather somebody just walk up and punch me instead of punching my car. You know, it's a lot more work to fix my car. You know, have fun.
So I have to ask, did you go to the nationals at Marysville last year?
Yes.
Did you ride the mechanical bull in the pits? That's all I need to know.
No, I watched. I almost got talked into it, but no, I didn't need to land on my head and go not show up to work next week and go, why aren't you working? Yeah, I got hurt on a mechanical bull.
Yeah, that was it. When I saw that was going on, I was like, oh my gosh, y'all took that to a whole new level in the pits for that one. That was very, very cool.
And see, that's the stuff that's kind of fun that you'll never forget. Like watching Ronnie Williams ride the mechanical bull. It's like, after a few drinks, somebody brought out a bunch of Jello shots. That's the fun part of dwarf cars. They need to almost slow it. I always say they need to slow it down a little bit, include more. The fans get, even just slow it down a little bit. They start the racing at like 6 o'clock, and it just seems like you rush because there's so much racing going on. They need to slow down and let it, kind of let the people in the stands get a little more involved and just slow it down a little bit, even if they start an hour earlier.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to tell everybody. If you have not been to one of these Dwarf Car Nationals, you got to go one time. If there's any in your area, go and support it. Go hang out in the pits afterwards, because I guarantee you will not be disappointed. There's some, I'll just say there's shenanigans going in the pits.
Yeah.
Is that a safe word to say?
That is. Marysville especially. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
I didn't get to go to that one. Stephen Blakesley took care of all that last year. And then, they got the big pocket change race they do every year that Andrew Kunis puts on. Andrew was down at Kern. Got to give a big shout out to him for taking over the announcing duties on Saturday with the shift in the schedule to get around the storm and all. So he stepped up big, and there's just so many cool stuff that y'all get to do with the dwarf cars. And I want to encourage people to get more excited about what they do, because the Nationals are worth every dime to go watch it. That's just my personal opinion.
To me, for the dollar to race a dwarf car, I think it's, dollar for dollar for what racing. There's so much racing out there that people spend just so much money on. It's like other stunt guys at work. I'm always saying, hey, they're always saying they do this, they're doing that. I'm like, come out and freaking drive a dwarf car. We don't want to do that. It's too expensive. It's less than racing a motorcycle. And
Yep.
You know what? It's a driver's class. That's the thing. It's, you go out, you have a lot of fun. And to me, that's what I always tell a bunch of stunt guys, you want to have fun, come out and race a dwarf car.
Yeah, well, David Owens, I'll just give you a quick shout out. I was scrolling through all the different pages that we're on there. No, I'm not seeing any of the comments. Facebook changed all their apps and permissive stuff with what we're doing with StreamYard, and I don't get them, so I'm having to go through each page. He said, not a problem. I enjoyed being there at 99 this past weekend. And he goes, those NorCal dwarf cars are effing quick. But yes. And yes, they're faster than the Legends on the pavement. We went over the times. Y'all were not very far off from the late model pace with the dwarf cars over there on the asphalt. So, I mean, they're flat getting after it. So, but what was cool about the dwarf cars on the pavement, no special tires. They didn't do anything special. It was the same dirt tires. Great racing even on the asphalt, and congratulations to Dylan on picking up the win, Dylan Trum. So good job, guys.
All right on.
So, well, we're right up on an hour. I think we'll end it right here. Do you have any sponsors and people you need to thank that's got you where you're at so far?
You know what? I couldn't do it without my girlfriend, Jennifer Bishop. I drive. It's her car that I drive. So to me, definitely couldn't do it without her. And Chuck LaHorge at LRC, Ron Lachine at Maximum Oil. Those are the people that kind of helped me. And yeah, I couldn't do it without Chuck and Jennifer's help for sure. And the biggest thing is just get more people out there and have some fun. And I appreciate you doing this, because there's not many people out there promoting dwarf cars. And like I said, I tell all kinds of stunt guys at work, come on out and race a dwarf car. But
well, and this is the whole thing. We promote racing in general on here. Guys, if you're watching this and you're going to, guys and gals both, and you're going to the racetrack this week or this year, grab somebody that hasn't ever been. Grab one of those and say, hey, come with us to the racetrack. I guarantee you once they go, they'll be fans. It doesn't matter what class it is. My wife's shaking her head. No, she's still not a fan. So, but no, it's one of those sports that you cannot have. A bad day at the racetrack is still better than a good day at work. I don't care what anybody says.
That's for sure.
So, all right, well, hang tight. We'll end it right here. Thank you, everybody that's tuned in and watched and commented. I'll go back and try to look at the comments afterwards. But thank you, guys, and we'll see you at the races.
Thanks for having me, Roy.
You're welcome. Thanks.